Welcome to the Bouquet Toss, the podcast that helps you plan your wedding day your way. We're your hosts, Jessica
and Sari, and each episode we pick apart the traditions and trends that you either love, hate, or just don't understand to help us all figure out why we do weddings the way that we do. The Bouquet Toss is a Love Stories TV podcast. And today, we're going to go past the wedding to the honeymoon.
Yes.
It's all about honeymoons.
I mean, honestly, I kind of feel like it's the more fun part in some ways.
In some ways. Maybe not all.
Not all, but
yeah.
It is a lot of fun.
Yeah. I mean, we were inspired to do this episode because actually my sister had a friend who was like, I don't even know where to begin. We don't know where we want to go on our honeymoon. Does Sari have any resources? And I was like, we're going to do another episode.
Thanks for the idea.
Yeah. And we did actually have the Honeyfund queen herself, Sarah Margulis, on an episode way back in season 1. And we're bringing her back today.
Yes.
But before we get there, let's just talk a little bit about how to go about planning your honeymoon.
Yeah. I mean, you got to start somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
I think the first thing is discussing with your partner, like, what kind of trip do you want to go on?
So there's different categories of trips. There's a relaxation kind of trip, which you would kind of like juxtapose with an adventure trip. So it's like, do you want a relaxing beach getaway, or are you like hiking and like skydiving?
Yeah, if you're, adrenaline junkies
Yes.
and you want to be very active, mountain climbing or zip lining or something like that, maybe that's the style you're after.
And maybe this is the chance for you to like do that, because you might not plan a trip for that otherwise. But
very true.
Then you also have the romantic versus the fun. So like, think romantic, like you're getting like a luxury type of suite and you're having like intimate dinners in a private villa.
Maybe getting a couples massage somewhere.
Ooh, love it. Or is it more like a fun, like you want to be with other people, you want a place with a nightlife, you want to have that kind of like party, social
pool parties, and dancing and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah. And then the last classification here is cultural or nature-based. So cultural would be that kind of like, what I just did in Italy. If you love history and art and, seeing all of those types of things, museums, all of that. Or a nature type of lover might prefer like, Costa Rica or even like Australia or somewhere, where there's a different climate, there's like different types of trees and animals and things to see. So
going completely off the grid or something.
Yeah, absolutely. And so because there are so many options, I also feel like it's key to remember, like any budget can have a honeymoon, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
There's options far and wide. And even within your trip, you can stay at like a really nice upscale hotel for maybe like 2-3 nights, and then have another hotel that maybe you stay in longer that's less expensive, but like you still kind of get that luxury feel, but not maybe for the whole time.
Right. Yeah. Mixing and matching is a great way to keep the budget just overall in check.
Right. And so it's something that I think you have to prioritize early on. Like if you think that you want to be saving towards it, the sooner you start, the better.
Right.
And I think our advice would be to have a separate savings account if you can.
Absolutely.
Like separate from the wedding savings.
Yeah, definitely. And, having some sort of rough idea about, once you've kind of decided on the type of trip you want, maybe doing a little bit of research and finding out what that might cost and setting that as a goal. But there's obviously other ways to reduce the cost without actually having to spend your own money.
Yes. So some of those ways are to use your travel points.
Yes.
Which credit card points, right? We did that for one of the hotels that we stayed at, and we were like, this is like a way that we can get a little bit more of a fancy one, like put our points towards it. And also towards our flights.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's been a couple seasons since we had Jess Field on, who talked a lot about, travel,
Queen of
credit
points.
card reward points. It's honestly like the best time in your life. You're going to be spending money on vendor deposits, venue, like your wedding dress, everything you can put on a credit card. You're going to be earning points and, opening a new card. You can earn a sign-up bonus. bonus where, sometimes just one sign-up bonus can pay for a round-trip international flight or several nights in a hotel, depending on the chain that you're, staying with. If you're brand loyal to a certain hotel, you can really make those points stretch pretty far.
Absolutely. And then if you also use that credit card to book that trip, then you also can continue accumulating points that can help you feel like you can achieve another trip after your honeymoon sooner rather than later.
Right.
Yeah. So,
and it all comes with the caveat, of course, that you have to be financially responsible and pay it off in full every month. And don't put things on your credit card that you can't actually pay off every month.
Yes.
But if you can figure out how to work the system, it's honestly the biggest life hack that you and your partner will be able to enjoy for the rest of your marriage together.
That's true. Yeah. And so then other ways that you can also help cut those costs are to look at off-season dates. So, this is something we always say with a wedding too. The off-peak season will have some cost savings for sure.
Yeah.
And so it helps, maybe you get that both from your honeymoon and your wedding. And also just looking at maybe less touristy destinations. These will just always be a little bit less money. And so if you're working with a budget that's smaller and you still want to have this feel like this special once in a lifetime trip, it can.
Yeah.
You just kind of have to make some different choices.
Absolutely. I think they call it the shoulder season or whatever, where it's not peak travel season in a certain destination, but booking outside of those super popular times of year can definitely give you a savings.
Right. And of course, you want to make sure to factor in any hidden costs. So the same way that we would caution you to take money out for tips at the beginning of your wedding budget, do the same thing, like, will you need travel insurance? Will you have baggage fees? You will also want some cash for tipping, or you might want to last minute do an excursion that you didn't plan, and you want to feel like you have the ability to do that and you have the funds available. So including just last minute buffer costs, I think, is good.
So smart.
And then you also might want to buy something from wherever you're going to memorialize
a little
this trip.
Souvenir.
Yeah. So keeping.
Did you get any souvenirs on your honeymoon?
Yeah. So we got. I wanted to get a print when we were kind of walking along the river, at one of those stands there, because we actually have from my grandma. She has two she passed them down, and they were these little painting drawings in London, and they are hung up in our bathroom, and it's a really beautiful reminder of her all the time. Aww. But it's these beautiful drawings with watercolor, and it's different cities and or different places, and so I knew I really wanted to get one from Italy too, and
I love that.
And I'm trying to look for a very similar frame that I can put it in. But yeah.
I love that so much. And we also have to talk about your other big honeymoon souvenir, which was your photographer photos.
Yes. Can't wait to share all of those.
Yes.
Yeah. So a couple episodes back, we talked about I was going to be doing a photo shoot on my honeymoon in Venice.
Yes.
Using Flytographer, and it was, I can't even understate this. It was the easiest process because our photographer was so knowledgeable and just so she just knew every possible thing. So we did in Venice, we got maybe an hour of no rain the entire time we were there. And she was so good. She was messaging with me days before being do you have another day open? It looks like it's going to rain. Can you move it a few hours back? Just super accommodating and
that's wonderful.
Really, looking out for us. And we truly managed to get the only hour that there wasn't rain. It was incredible. And then, of course, she's native to there. She grew up there. She knew every single place that we needed to go. She knew how to avoid the crowds. She knew all the hidden gems. And it was such an easy, fun experience. And, I said it on that episode, but I am notoriously bad at remembering to take photos.
Yeah.
When I'm on a trip, I think I can take photos of things in front of me, but then I'm not in them.
Right.
And my husband's much worse. So we knew that having somebody dedicating some time to getting these really beautiful pictures was going to be well worth it. And I mean, I love them. They came out so good.
Aw, that's so sweet.
Yeah.
I really feel like that's such a special experience to have. And obviously, that's something you could budget for yourself on your honeymoon if you want to book it yourself. But adding it as, an option on your wedding registry is also a great hack. So.
Yeah, I think that's a really fun thing because there's going to be people who want to find like something out of the box to gift you, and maybe even like your bridal party or something wants to get you a gift for like your, I don't know. There's just tons of different things, and something like that is so specific because then you're gonna see like the product of it after with the photos.
Absolutely.
And I can imagine you sending like a photo thank you card to that person that gifted it to you, with the picture from the shoot.
I love that so much.
It'd be really cool.
That's really sweet.
So yeah, I mean, now we've alluded to it, but a honeymoon registry, obviously something, well worth it at this point. I think we've debated all the, different qualms and the different worries that people might have about setting one up. I think luckily every single day people are getting more and more comfortable with this. It's like a household term, and this is, just part of what you do now when you're creating your wedding registry.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So we'll hear more about that later when we bring in Sarah.
Yes.
But I think something else that I wanted to touch on is how to kind of evaluate like how much time you're going to spend on your trip.
Yeah.
I think that there's a feeling a bit, at least I felt this way, of like, this is it. This is the blowout trip. This is the, we were going to Europe. So you kind of want to go for a sizable amount of time.
Right.
Like you're flying pretty far and you want to be there, but you also do have to then weigh like the more nights you're there, the more food you're buying, the more hotel stay you need. And so kind of like balancing that I think is important. So wherever it is that you choose to go, I think it's important to talk to other people who've been, and hopefully pretty recently, and get a feel from them like, did you feel like it was long enough? Did you get to do everything you wanted to do? I think like for instance, we wanted to it was a priority to get all 4 cities that we went to in, and we had 12 days to do it. And so it was a bit exhausting. Like we were moving hotels every 3 nights.
Yeah.
And
musical chairs,
truly
hotels.
Yeah. And it's a train ride every time. And, it's amazing how easy it is to do in Europe and in Italy, but it was a bit exhausting. And I did kind of like come to this realization while we were there. And I was like, I can't wait to talk about this on the podcast. I think that if you are going on a relaxing beach getaway, and you're picturing just having a drink in your hands and all you can eat and just like being in the sun.
Being a lounge lizard.
Yes.
With a fruity beverage with an umbrella in it.
If that's what you picture for your honeymoon, I say you go right after the wedding.
Yeah.
Like give it maybe like a day buffer, and then I think you should fly out and you should just relax and enjoy and look at your pictures and sit on the beach and just like revel in it. If you're doing the type of cultural honeymoon that we were doing, where we had 4 different cities and we were traveling every 5 minutes,
like lots of sightseeing and such.
Sightseeing and doing all the things, and it was amazing. But I would never suggest that somebody do this right after their wedding.
That's a good insight to have. I mean, anything that requires an itinerary sounds overwhelming after coming down off such a big event.
Yeah, because the post-wedding blues are so real. People say it, but you don't understand it until you're going through it. And I think something that could definitely combat that. Like if I had gone to Greece right after and sat on the beach, like I probably would have been less blue.
Yeah.
But
who wouldn't be?
We didn't, right.
Who wouldn't feel better?
But we got married in March, and we knew, everybody told us if we're going to Italy, we should go in October. Like it's, not the peak time, and you still get good weather. And it was like a hands down thing that everybody said. So we were like, okay, done. We're going to get married in March. We're going to have another few months to save. Like we'll feel a little bit better about it, and we'll go in October. And so we did. We had our flights booked by the time our wedding came around, but we didn't have anything else planned. And I was glad, because you're already planning this huge wedding. Like the thought of having to plan anything else.
Yeah.
And I already think I did a little less planning than I should have for the honeymoon. So I definitely feel like if you have an itinerary, if you have to make constant decisions about where you'll be and how you'll get to and from places,
right,
it's a not after the wedding type of thing. It's a wait a little bit type of situation.
That's really good insight, because it is like a lot to go from that big overwhelm into go here, there, everywhere.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, and I think just in general, it is very nice to have a buffer after your wedding, because it just extends your bridal era even longer.
Yeah. I mean, at least take even if you do like a later moon, technically,
right?
Like maybe have at least a day off afterwards where you're not returning back to work on Monday.
This is real, and I did not do this enough.
Oh, wow.
I had started a new job in January, and my wedding was in March, and so I was being a bit conservative. I wanted to make sure I had enough days for the honeymoon, so I took 2 days off before the wedding, and I took 1 day off after, and it was not enough.
Yeah.
Going back into work after that, I was just like, what do you mean I can't just talk about my wedding all day? Like,
Yeah.
it was hard. So I do also suggest that if you're not going, you don't have to go anywhere. You could do a staycation, but give yourself that time to like come down from the high of all of it.
Decompress a little.
Yeah.
Yeah. Reacclimate.
Yeah.
So, yeah, super good advice.
Yeah. And then I think that something else that you obviously need to explore is like, are you going to be going international, or are you going to stay domestic?
Right, because that'll really influence probably the amount of time you'll have or need to be able to do everything, because especially going overseas, you need a little bit of extra buffer time to adjust to the time difference.
Jet lag of it all.
Yes.
Absolutely.
I'm sorry, Taylor Swift, but jet lag is not a choice.
She thinks it's a choice.
Yeah, she said that to Travis Kelce on the field after the Super Bowl. He's like, thank you so much for being here. And she's like, jet lag is a choice. And I was like, maybe if you're a billionaire with a private jet.
And you have a private jet. Yeah, maybe then. No, jet lag is not a choice.
It's not. It's real.
I had a very hard time with it. I am somebody who like loves to boast about how I can sleep anywhere at any time. And that just wasn't true of this.
That's a superpower.
It is.
I'm jealous.
But I didn't sleep well on the flight there.
Really?
So I was a mess. And I was so tired. And we walked 14 miles one day. I mean, we got well over 20,000 steps in every day. I was exhausted.
Yeah.
And so I like truly, that's why I like turned to my husband at one point and I was just like, imagine doing this right after the wedding.
Right.
Like it just would have been not even worth it. We would have been, I wouldn't have had my eyes open.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So true.
Yeah.
It's really the difference between like a vacation and a trip. You know what I mean?
Ooh, I was definitely saying that. I was like, I need a vacation from my
the
trip.
honeymoon.
Mm-hmm. Which I loved it. It was absolutely freaking incredible. Trip of a lifetime. But it was just something I really clocked. Like, I was just so glad that I had recharged prior to it, because I couldn't have imagined going right into that.
Right. Totally. Yeah. Well, let's get into some like savvy tips.
Great.
So obviously, when it comes to travel, flights is a big expense. There are some great tools that you can use to find the best deals on flights. I'm personally a big Google Flights fan, which is like pretty general, right?
Yeah.
But you can easily see all the flights that are available from the different airlines on a given day and see what's the most affordable.
And get alerts for price drops.
Yes.
Or price increases.
And that is like the tip, really, is if you have a general idea or a specific idea of the dates you're looking at, setting those up well in advance to be able to jump on it when the prices get good.
When the price is right.
Yeah. And whether you're using cash money dollars or travel points, those alerts are really handy.
Mm-hmm.
There's also, apps that find discounted fares. Oftentimes, though, they are connecting flights and not necessarily the most direct or quickest or best options. But if you're looking to travel on a budget, Skyscanner and Hopper are great resources to use for that.
Okay, wish I would have done that, because another thing I learned on my honeymoon that I would like to pass forward is you should splurge for first class if you can. Like, there's no other time maybe that you'll be able to do it. But if you can score enough discounts in other places and like actually budget for that, it makes such a difference.
Yeah. And if for some reason you can't budget for it, going to the gate when you check in and just casually mentioning you're on your honeymoon, and if there happens to be empty seats in first class, you might be the lucky ones to get an upgrade.
Yeah, I really wanted to try that, but my husband was like, no, we're not doing that.
Your mileage may vary, but it's worth trying.
Yeah, it's true. Honestly, you should do that every single place you go.
Right. We're on our honeymoon.
Everywhere. I know. It's like I always joked about it because the Monica of Friends and all, like she would do that like everywhere.
Yes.
But it actually does work. We only did this for one of the hotels, but in like when we booked it online, you were able to put like any like, you know, special requests or anything. And so I was like, you know what? Let's just try it. And I was like, this is our honeymoon trip. Like if we could get a view of the river or something like that, something, you know. And when we got there, they were like, oh, we have a special gift for you. And we were like, what? And they gave us like a free bottle of Prosecco.
Oh, so
and they were
sweet.
like, congratulations on your marriage. And it was just because we told them it was our honeymoon.
Right.
So,
I mean, that's such a special touch and makes
right.
all the difference to you, but it really doesn't cost them all that much at the end of the day.
Don't be shy. Tell everybody.
Tell everyone.
Literally. Tell anyone and everyone. Tell anyone who will listen.
Even at any restaurant, they're probably going to bring you a free slice of cake or something.
Like
literally.
Anywhere. Just tell every single person.
Yes.
Okay, this also brings us to accommodations platforms.
Yes.
And this is something that I did not know this before, and I will admit I saw it on TikTok, and it is really important.
Oh, tell me.
So if you are going to use your credit card points to book a hotel, you shouldn't actually book it through your carrier, your credit card site.
Right.
Because, and I know you know this, and you're probably like, girl, did I not teach you anything?
No, but everybody needs to know.
But everybody needs to know this, because if you book it straight through, like Chase or whatever it is, you won't actually get the lowest price necessarily.
Right, it's true.
If you click out and go through, like you have to go through your point site, but click out to their website, you can click that you want to use the points from the card and transfer it. Right.
Yes.
That's what you have to do, because then you get the real savings.
Yeah, it's true. There is some cases where it might be better to do it through the Chase portal, but more often than not, especially with certain hotel chains, I will say personally, I'm a big Hyatt fan, and I've become very loyal to Hyatt properties because they have them all over the world, and the redemption value for like a night in one of their hotels is so much less than some of the others. So your points will go a lot farther, you know, with certain hotels, specifically Hyatt. But, you know, sometimes I think if you have like a certain level of a Chase credit card, like the Preferred or Reserve, Sapphire cards, you get like a bonus on like the amount of points it takes. So like your points are actually worth, I think, 1.5 times worth, like in the portal. But like you mentioned, the prices are often a little bit inflated within the travel portal versus directly. So it's worth checking both before you transfer points or make your decision.
Okay.
But it's all about like looking at the numbers side by side.
Okay. That's that. Look, I learned the hard way. It's fine. And so what about getting like cash back or discounts?
Yeah, so when you're shopping for anything online using platforms like Rakuten Rewards or Capital One Shopping, you can get cash back when you're booking these things on major hotel, you know, websites or airlines even. So checking, you know, your favorite preferred platform of choice and seeing what those like cash rebates might be for each of those different airlines or hotels that you're looking at booking can be an additional way to stack savings.
Yeah, I feel like for me at least, a lot of this feels very overwhelming.
Yeah.
But the rewards from this go so far. And so I do feel like if you haven't gotten to the point where you become like a points person, this would be the time.
Yeah.
Like when you're going to take a trip, it's, you have some time to plan it.
Yep.
So this would really be the time, and like learn from what I say, not what I do, but really to get into that habit, because it's going to allow you to keep getting these rewards and keep traveling beyond just the honeymoon that you're planning.
Absolutely. That's the goal.
Yeah.
Keep it going. Keep it moving.
Yeah. So when you are booking something, how much, how many months before do you need to be, ideally, I wouldn't say need, but what would you recommend when you're trying to book your flight? Like how far in advance?
Yeah, definitely, the sooner the better in terms of like getting a good rate. I would definitely say like no closer than 3 months out. Like I would say closer to 6 months is probably good. But as soon as you make your decisions, like doing it ahead of time is always great.
And then when you are doing it and you're picking the days, being flexible with the date you fly out, I think, is really helpful.
Yeah, oftentimes like the cheapest flights are on like a Tuesday or a Wednesday. Like a midweek flight is going to be more affordable than like a Friday or a Sunday, which are most common and most popular for people who are trying to leave for the weekend and come back in time for the work week. So if you can be flexible on the day of the week that you leave and you have that vacation time from work, definitely it also would help you to have those extra couple days to decompress before you leave on a trip as well.
And on the back end.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so if you did come back, like, you know, you want to maximize it and like stay through the weekend, but if you do come back to at least have like a day or two, especially if you're going to have jet lag, that's also important.
You need a definite like couch day in full when you get back, at least one.
Yeah. So what about like budget airlines? I think sometimes people get nervous.
They come with risks.
Okay.
I mean, you know, I haven't taken a budget airline for an international trip, to be honest, just because they're often like, you know, not as reliable, and I've heard some horror stories, but this is where travel insurance is definitely a worthy investment, especially for like an international trip. But I've had some nightmare experiences with the budget airlines just within the US. So I tend to be trying to stay away from those. But that being said, you can get a good deal on the flight itself, but you have to keep an eye on the extra fees, because often the budget carriers make you pay more individually for every little thing, like getting to select your seat at all,
your bags,
bringing a carry-on bag or a checked bag, you know, early boarding, whatever the case might be. So
that's how they get you.
What looks like a super good deal in actuality is not that much cheaper than flying with a normal airline a lot of the times.
So that's just something to really keep in mind. Another savvy tip that I like is taking advantage of stopover destinations. So if you can't get a flight that's straight there nonstop, and you need to do a layover, instead of spending 3 to 9 hours just sitting in the airport, consider actually making whatever that destination is part of your trip for 2 nights, maybe 1 night, something like that. And you kind of get to like, it feels less like, oh, well, we have a layover. It's more like we're just on our way there.
Right. And did you know that some airlines actually let you book that full like itinerary from like, say, New York to Barcelona, but you stop over in Paris or something like that? They let you book it as one ticket, but they allow you to extend that stopover for no additional fee. So that's like a savvy way to do multiple destinations on one flight ticket.
That's a hack.
Yeah, it's a super hack.
I
wish I could remember which airline specifically did it, but it's a lot of the European carriers in particular that do allow for that, like within the cost of the ticket. You would just have to call the airline and essentially like have them adjust the dates for you.
Got it. Oh man, take advantage of that.
Yeah.
Cool. We're doing good here. Another savvy tip would be to consider something like house sitting or swapping.
Yeah.
So I
that's
think
super savvy.
Yeah, I mean, you know, so many people are still renting, and the thought of paying for like 2 weeks of your very expensive apartment while you're not going to be there, you know, if you do have somebody that comes and stays, that's money that you can be putting towards the trip.
So true.
Yeah. And then also think about that as part of your trip. So maybe you don't stay in a hotel when you go to wherever you're going, and maybe for part of it you stay in like a house swap type of situation. Maybe, you know, there's people, I know one of my best friends, when she went to Italy for her honeymoon, part of the trip she stayed on like a farm with like a host family.
Oh, wow.
And so they had to like do some of the work on the farm.
I don't know if I want to work on my honeymoon, if I'm being honest.
But it was like picking tomatoes. Like it was nothing crazy.
It's cultural immersion.
Yeah. And then they got like home cooked meals, and they had people to like kind of tell them where to go and what to do, and feel like they were kind of home for part of it.
I do love a local guide.
Yeah.
So that's, I mean, there's trade-offs. There's benefits to that for sure. Well, I think basically we've discovered that there's a lot of creative ways to save money and have an incredible trip. And one of those is by utilizing a honeymoon fund. So should we bring in Sarah and chat all about how couples can take advantage of that?
Yes, let's do it.
We are so excited to have a special guest with us today to talk all about an affordable way to fund your honeymoon. We are joined by the CEO of Honeyfund, Sarah Margulis. And Honeyfund is the OG of honeymoon funding platforms, so much so that it's practically a proper noun. It is literally the term that we all use for this concept of a honeymoon registry. So we're so excited to have you, Sarah.
Thank you, ladies, for inviting me. I'm so happy to be here.
Awesome. So to give our listeners just a little bit of insight, what inspired you to create Honeyfund?
Yeah, so I was planning my own wedding back in 2004, I think, and we already had all the stuff. We didn't need to furnish our one-bedroom apartment in San Francisco. And we were both working full-time. We were really burned out, and we were like, where can we go on our honeymoon that's like the farthest away possible? That would just be so much fun and like get us out of here. And we were like, let's go to Fiji. It just sounded exotic. We literally had no idea where it was or like, what kind of stuff was there. Just like the name just evoked this sort of like exotic escape.
It does. It totally does.
It absolutely does.
Yeah. And so we looked into it and we're like, oh yeah, that's halfway around the world and like the farthest possible flight we could take. Like we're going to need some, financial help to make this happen. So we just kind of like, I guess originally just thought, how could we like repurpose our gifts into, helping us get to this honeymoon? And I looked up like the idea of it. I just Googled it, this is like in the days when Google was kind of new, right? Like people were just now making the switch from like Yahoo, to Google
Ask
search.
Jeeves.
Oh my gosh, ask Jeeves.
Yeah, exactly. Like so we're talking about OG. So, we looked up like, are there things like this that exist, a honeymoon wedding registry? And we found a few options, but they were all pretty outdated, even for the web standards of 2004. And they were expensive. They wanted to charge like 9%.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, you've got to be kidding me. Like that's a whole night on our honeymoon that we'd be paying in fees, right? So we were just like, let's just kind of build a makeshift wish list of things we're going to do. And, my ex co-founder, Josh Margulis, was our CTO, and he's a software engineer. And he was able to build us a page that was really the first Honeyfund. And our friends and family went crazy over the idea. They were like, this is so cool. So many other couples need this. I wish I had this when I got married. And so we launched Honeyfund less than a year after our own wedding and have helped more than 1.4 million couples make their dream honeymoon happen.
That's incredible.
Incredible. I think it's kind of evident already from what you've said about like you were burnt out at work and, obviously then add planning a wedding onto that. It's like an exotic vacation is what seems to be like the perfect medicine, but would love to hear in your words, why you feel like honeymooning is so important for a couple right when they get married.
Yeah, I'm so glad you asked this because we've done a lot of research around the importance of travel in a relationship. And our data shows that couples who take a honeymoon are more likely to be happily married more than a decade later than couples who didn't take a honeymoon, which to me, that's just my favorite stat. It gives me goosebumps every time I say it. And there's a lot of reasons that you could dive into. If I was, in psychology research, I would look at things like, quality time, time away from the stress of everyday life, time to explore, to be in a state of wonder with your partner. It's such a bonding experience to go through that. So there's all kinds of reasons why, I would postulate that travel is good for relationships, but it's, we've got some early data showing there's a true correlation there.
Mm-hmm.
Incredible. So for couples, especially concerned with making honeymooning affordable on top of the cost of a wedding, obviously Honeyfund helps with that. But do you have any other advice for couples who are trying to plan a meaningful honeymoon on a budget?
Yeah, absolutely. There's so many great ways now to make travel happen. The first thing I would say is like start early and really talk about where you want to go together, because there's a lot of places you can go and a lot of them are more affordable than others. For example, like Thailand is a great place to go because of the cost of living there, but it's, going to be a more expensive flight to get there. but there's alternatives to places like that that are closer, certain parts of Mexico, easy to get to, and more on the affordable side. So start talking early about where you want to go. I really love the idea of just a ChatGPT travel advisor, chat in like, hey, this is who we are. This is where we're coming from. We have passports. We don't have passports. We have this much budget. Can you help us find the right destination? So that's number one, find the right destination.
Love that.
Number two, obviously, a Honeyfund is super helpful. Friends and family absolutely love giving to a Honeyfund. It's such a different experience for them to shop for excursions and, romantic meals and, room upgrades over sheets and towels and plates.
Toasters.
Yeah, exactly. And then, I always recommend that couples open a credit card with travel benefits. So that could be like a Marriott Bonvoy card or a Southwest Visa, depending on what airline or hotel you like, or what has the most options available to you. You can start earning points towards your trip with all of the expenses of your wedding, which is,
Right.
This is a time when you're going to spend a lot more money than you probably ever have at once, and you might as well get some benefits from that, some rewards. You can also open a zero interest card so that you can actually book the trip and then pay it off with your Honeyfund after you get back. So there's lots of really fun, creative ways to make your honeymoon happen.
Yeah, that's such great advice. Have you noticed any specific destinations that seem to be trending among your users?
Yeah, this is so exciting. So we're just now getting access to Honeyfund's 18 years of data around destinations and experiences that couples are registering for, which basically makes up their itinerary. So some of the early things we're seeing, we knew that coming out of COVID, Italy was the number one destination. It took over Hawaii, which was Hawaii has always been our stronghold. But in this year 24, we're seeing a lot more people going a lot farther, going for longer amounts of time, and Asia is really attracting people. So we're seeing a lot of Japan and Thailand, and I expect that trend to continue into 2025. Japan just seems to be on fire right now.
Wow, that's so interesting. Well, Sari went on a Italian honeymoon herself recently.
I did. I guess predictable.
Oh, Sari, tell me where you went. I love Italy.
Yes. So we went to Venice. We then went to Turin and actually went to a wedding. And then Florence and then Rome.
Wow. So Turin, as in the Shroud of Turin, is that the same place? Wow,
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah, it was initially it was the capital of Italy, and then it moved to Florence, and then it moved to Rome. So there's also just a ton of history there. But yeah, we saw the big structure that the Shroud of Turin is in.
Wow.
But yeah, and I think I'm curious to get your take on this. Something that my husband and I were constantly grappling with is, we wanted to do Greece as well. And we were like, maybe we should do both. And we did get advice from others who said, you can't really do Italy right if you're not there for, at least 10 days. And having to split that was just advice we were not given. And I was very much in this nervous space of well, what if this is our last chance to travel and we never do it again? And he was like, we can't look at it that way. We have to really be open to the idea that this is just the beginning. But I do think for a lot of people, there is a feeling of your honeymoon is the last chance you're going to get because everything gets so busy. And if you want children and then you have them and it's really hard. And so I'm curious, how do you feel like a Honeyfund can also inspire this wanderlust for couples to continue to keep travel in their life?
That's a great question. I think, and this might be your experience, but once you actually take the trip and come back, you have this new appreciation for the joys of travel and all that it can offer your relationship. And I think one reason why maybe couples who take a honeymoon are set up for more marital success is because they've had that experience. They know, oh yeah, we can get away from it all when things get too much, right? That time away really is important and valuable, and it's worth it, our time and money to invest in it. So I think that that's one thing to keep in mind. I've heard so many stories of couples who their lives were completely changed by their honeymoon. We have a couple who went to Europe and fell in love with the UK and ended up moving there and opening a B&B
Aw.
in
Oh
the
my God.
countryside of the UK. Totally changed their life, just that one trip.
I love that.
And so I think it's really important to just take that first step. Life is going to throw all kinds of obstacles in your way and challenges. And yes, having young children is difficult and stressful, but if you are committed to each other and to traveling with each other, you'll always find a way to make it happen.
Absolutely.
And exploring new places together, it's like novelty. It's like infusing that like freshness into your relationship and just giving you new opportunities to connect. And I feel like when you travel with someone, you like learn new things about each other too along the way. So I definitely think it's important to prioritize like into your marriage too.
Yeah, I agree. I think something that I commonly see on like bride Facebook groups is some people, I think you have either the people that like they've known since they even met their partner, like where their honeymoon was going to be. And then you have people who maybe do travel often. And so they're a little bit more open to like where their honeymoon might be. And a lot of it is like, how do I decide? How should I even get started? How do you pick where you want to go? And so I'm curious, if you have any thoughts on getting started if, you haven't thought of honeymooning in Greece since you were 9.
Yeah, I mean, by the way, Greece is another big trending destination. You were right on with that one, Sari. Yeah, I mean, I think you have to start with an honest conversation, like about how you've traveled before. In fact, even better if you can take a trip together before you get married. You can learn a lot about someone, like Jess said, when you're traveling together. And it's a little bit of a pressure test sometimes, when flights are late and, or things don't work out the way you thought they would. Like, how does this person handle being under pressure? Because that's what marriage and parenting and everything else is. And you got to know that this person is ready to take that on with you, right? But, if you can't travel before you go, I think you have to sit down, or before you go on your honeymoon, I think you have to sit down and say to each other, okay, like, do you like to travel? How long do you want to be gone? How long does your work let you off? Can you handle a long flight, or do you prefer a short flight? Do you want to drive? Do you want to take a train? Like, what are the things that are in your heart around your honeymoon? And just start comparing notes. And like, it's such a fun conversation to have over dinner, date night. Like, hey, this is our honeymoon exploration date night, and just be really open and really like willing to kind of hear your partner's perspective and think about things you've never thought about before, and you'll land on something just in that interface back and forth.
That's so beautiful.
I love that. And then you can create like a bucket list destinations, joint mutual list together. And I don't know, like, do couples use Honeyfund beyond just funding their honeymoon, like for future travel or any other sort of options?
Yeah, so we've been working on this for a while now. We're putting together basically like the functionality so that you can do a second honey fund for whatever that is, an anniversary, a milestone birthday, or even just a like, hey, we're burned out and we need a trip. And friends and family absolutely want to support you in that. I think that's another important point, is when couples are in the thick of the young children and the stress of, increased pressure at work or whatever it is, that you can raise your hand to your friends and family and say, we need a break, and who can step up and help us, whether that's, grandma coming to stay with the kids, or, your sister or brother taking them for the weekend, or friends and family pitching into a second honey fund. I think it's really important that we kind of get used to asking for help, because a lot of couples in this day and age are very isolated. The sort of like nuclear family model is very different from the way humans have lived for thousands and thousands of years, right?
Yeah.
We've lived in more like small villages with more extended family in a dwelling. Yeah. And in today's day and age, 2 working parents in one household and no other support is really, really hard. And it's not really an option in this economic climate, like to have one working parent for a lot of people. So, so yeah, I think being able to raise your hand and call on your community, even though they don't live in your house, they're still there for you, right? They still want to support you. So we're really excited to roll that out and see the kind of reaction that it gets.
That's really cool. It's almost like you could just leave your honey fund open forever and be like, instead of buying me a birthday gift, just like donate there. And then over time, maybe you build up enough to go and do
Right.
something else, you know?
Yeah, and then you have your points you're earning on your card, and you have other rewards that we're going to be building into the platform that can basically be accumulating. Kind of like, think of it like a Rakuten Rewards or something like that, where like you can get
Oh,
cash back on things you buy, but it's funding your next trip.
Oh,
That's kind of the
amazing.
vision that
So
we see for
smart.
Honeyfund.
that's so cool.
Genius.
So, Sarah, if you were planning a honeymoon today, where would you want to go?
Oh boy, I think a lot about this. I've been to some really amazing places, and I don't have a big trip planned at the moment, and it's the longest period of time I think I haven't had a big trip planned in a while. So I'm like, the world is my oyster. Where do I want to go next? I think a lot about Central and South America. I enjoyed a trip to Costa Rica and Nicaragua a few years back, but I haven't been to Brazil or Argentina or Chile. Those all sound really, really neat. Um, I've never been to Greece. I definitely want to go there. Italy,
Same.
I did a few years ago. It was magical, and I would love to go back to Italy, but Greece is really calling to me, and Turkey and Croatia. I think I could see like a trip that wraps all three of those into one. And then I haven't really explored much of the Mediterranean, those little islands off of the coast of Spain, Mallorca, for example. I haven't explored much of the Caribbean. I've been to Jamaica and the Bahamas, but I haven't been to any of the U.S. Virgin Islands or the British Virgin Islands. They all sound great. So yeah, I mean, I don't even know. Thailand. I could go on and on.
Everywhere sounds great.
There's nowhere she won't go.
You're going to be
Yeah,
Carmen San
Thailand,
Diego.
Vietnam.
Where's Sarah now?
Exactly. Yeah. What about you? Where would you guys go next?
Oh, that's a great question. I do feel like Greece has been on my list for a really long time. I haven't been there. I've heard amazing things about Portugal.
Yeah, everyone's going to Portugal right now.
Yeah. So I think those are probably at the top of my list right now, but I also really love Bali. There's a special place in my heart for that little island, but I'd also like to do some of the other islands in that area too, like I haven't been to the Philippines or things like that. So
Yeah.
yeah,
And I will just point out that you can also travel within the States.
of course.
You know, I think
Yes.
that sometimes maybe a misconception about like a honey fund could be that it's really only for like more of an extravagant trip or somewhere that's far. And that is just not true. There's, you know, places to explore in your own backyard even. And so
true.
it's a good thing to also be prioritizing when you're planning and to, I think just, you know, I think some people still feel this weird feeling of like, you know, they don't want to ask people to contribute to this sort of thing. And you've hit on it a bit. It's like people want to support you in this, but I think, you know, just even expressing that it is important to you by having a honey fund is enough for people to be like, okay, yeah, that's something that I would really love to help them achieve.
Yeah, and our data shows that couples who kind of like make Honeyfund their primary wedding webpage and like registry one stop are more likely to get funded at a higher level to their honeymoon than if you kind of tack it onto a, you know, an all-in-one registry or like post it on another wedding website. Those kind of tend to drive towards the retail gifts because those are more lucrative for those companies. But you know, couples who use Honeyfund as their primary like destination for their givers and their wedding guests, I mean, they raise like $2, $3, $4, $5, $20,000 we've seen.
Wow.
And you know, like it really is so easy for guests to get behind. And I think that that's the misconception that you spoke to, Sari, is that, you know, it's hard to kind of like put it out there. Sometimes it feels a little like vulnerable, but you'll just be blown away by the reaction of your wedding guests.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love that. And it's great that you can build your wedding website through Honeyfund as well.
Yeah, like we have just like a one-page wedding website. A lot of our couples just want simpler alternative solutions. They don't want to get caught up in the whole world of like, you know, the Pinterest FOMO and all that. They're just like, give me a page. We have like beautiful designs, a lot of alternative designs. Like we have a lot of couples that are into like, you know, the world of Marvel or, you know, Comic-Con or into like Harry Potter, Star Wars, Disney, you know, so
fun.
we create themes that, you know, reflect those styles because a lot of that you won't see in more of the traditional wedding planning sites. So it's, to me, it seems really simple and like, this is what we are, this is who we are, this is what we want. And a lot of alternative couples find it helpful.
I love that.
I think like it's just so nice to hear a little more detail about Honeyfund proper, because as Jess said, now it's just like a household name. Like that's what you call like the act of funding your honeymoon. And so to hear, more about the intricacies of the actual platform and what you can do with it and where it's headed, you have some really cool things up your sleeve. So we're excited to see how everything continues to grow at Honeyfund.
Yes.
Thank you so much. I mean, it's been just one of the most fun things I've ever done is, create this platform and help couples make their dream honeymoon happen, because I know it's the first step in happily ever after. And, what a privilege to be part of that for so many couples.
That is beautifully said.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today. And we hope that we can bring you back when you have even more to share about new features and things that we can find on Honeyfund.
Yes, I would love it. And thank you, ladies, for having me. It was so nice chatting with you. Anytime you want to plan a trip, I'm there.
Let's go to Greece.
Let's do it.
All right, before we head out, should we do a keep it or toss it?
Let's do it.
So an all-inclusive honeymoon.
I am all in for it. Keep.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll say keep. I didn't do it, but I'll keep it too because it sounds good.
I mean, honestly, it's depending on what it is that you want out of your honeymoon.
Yeah.
For me, like when I want a vacation, I want to just lounge around, not have to worry about where we're going for dinner, trying to find the perfect restaurant. Yeah, making a reservation, budgeting for all the different meals and activities we're doing.
Right.
So like all inclusive to me is just like the most relaxing and like stress-free way to vacation.
And I think it's the way that you can most prominently make sure that you don't go over budget.
Yeah, exactly. You know what you're paying up front, and
Right.
you don't necessarily have to budget for extras.
Right. Because that's the thing, I think, on any trip, not just your honeymoon, but like calories don't count and money is kind of like made up.
Right. We're girl mathing everything when it comes to the honeymoon.
Yeah. So definitely. And I think that if you're first starting out and you're looking for like, you're not sure where you want to go, I would say start with looking at like all-inclusive type places, like St. Lucia or in Aruba or something like that.
Riviera Maya in
Mexico.
It's very easily accessible from, definitely anybody on the East Coast. And there's tons of all-inclusive resorts there. And if you are a points girly like I am, you can actually get all-inclusive nights at a lot of the Hyatt properties that are like a sister brand, like Secrets, which is like an adults only all-inclusive. They have a ton of beautiful properties in that area that you can use Hyatt points to redeem free nights for all-inclusive.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right.
It's very savvy.
Okay. A social media detox while you're away on your trip.
I mean, I want to say keep because you want to be present for your honeymoon, but then you're going to want to look at all the wedding photos that people posted. Well,
Okay, I'm keeping it.
Okay.
Because we didn't go right after the wedding, so I didn't need to be on my phone for that.
Yeah.
And I had so many people text me, message me on Instagram, like, where are your photos? Why are you not posting anything? And I was like, because I'm being really present. I don't want to take even 5 seconds to be on my phone trying to figure out the perfect post.
Yep.
I was like, I can do that later. When I'm home, when I'm sad to be back in the States, I'll do that on that time. But I wanted to enjoy like every second. I also, like my husband is really just he does not post at all. And so it was like, I didn't want to take any time away from it. And I also felt like I didn't want to compare, like, I had been following accounts for so long of like things to do and, people's tips on things in Italy. And yes, I did like open the app to see some of my saved videos just to be like, oh, what was that restaurant I wanted to look at? But I didn't want to be then comparing to like those accounts and people, like things I was seeing. I wanted us to like do our trip.
Totally.
Yeah. A group honeymoon where you bring family or friends.
I'm going to say toss.
I'm tossing it too. I just feel like a group trip, there's a place for it.
Yeah.
And it could be so much fun, but not for your honeymoon.
Yeah, no, you want it to be special for the two of you who are starting your marriage together.
Yeah.
And you can save the family trip for another time.
Absolutely. Okay. Well, I think that we've now given everybody even more wanderlust. I think we're going to all go plan our next trip.
Yes.
I feel like if you always have, what is that saying? It's like if you always have a trip that you're planning, like you always, I don't know.
Something to look forward to.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
It's something like that. But like that, yeah, I think go start planning.
Yes.
I'm going to do it too.
Yes, me too. Always.
Thanks for tuning in to The Bouquet Toss from the team at thebudgetsavvybride.com. The Bouquet Toss is part of the Love Stories TV podcast network.
Your support for the show makes it all possible, so don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe on your favorite streaming platform and follow Budget Savvy Bride on social media.
As always, stay savvy and stay tuned for our next episode.